Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Asia Solar Energy for Climate Change Conference. We're a platform dedicated to harnessing the power of renewable energy in our fight against climate change. This conference is organized by CarbonCare InnoLab and funded by the Jockey Club Charities Trust. I'm your moderator today. My name is Bonnie Au. It's my honor to be here today to host a session on cross-border grid integration in Asia. We'll be looking at some of the opportunities and solutions regarding these grid integration in Asia. And joining us today, we have Mr. Matthew Wittenstein. He's the Chief of Section Energy Connectivity from the United Nations ASECCC. And then we also have May Theda Mang, Regional Energy Officer at WWF Greater Mekong. And then we also have joining shortly Dr. Chang Liu, Co-Chair and Secretary General of Global Forum on Energy Security. He's also the Director of Energy Security Studies at the Institute of Quantitative and Technological Economics, or in short, CASS. And then lastly, we also have Mr. Subrajit Dattare, Managing Director and Energy Consulting Practice Leader in India and South Asia from Tetra Tech. So our speakers will each take in turns to give their sharing on the topic, and after that, we'll have a short Q&A session with our speakers before opening up to the floor to take more questions from our fellow audience. Now, in a few moments, Matthew will help kickstart with the conversation. He'll be giving us an overview on what ASECCC does and explain the importance and benefits of grid integration in Asia. So before I get to Matthew, I have a short intro about Matthew. So as part of his role at ASECCC, he supports member states in their efforts to improve the sustainability and security of their energy systems through increased cross-border power system integration. He also supports efforts to develop secure and sustainable value chains for critical energy transition minerals. And prior to his role at the UN, Matthew was a senior electricity analyst at the International Energy Agency. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Matthew. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me just share my screen. Okay, hopefully you can see that okay.
Yep, I can see it, yes.
Great, okay. So yes, as Bonnie mentioned, I'm the Chief of Section for Energy Connectivity at the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. Let me briefly introduce ASECCC, because I imagine for many people in the audience, it's not a well-known institution. ASECCC is one of 5 UN regional commissions. We cover all of Asia and the Pacific, meaning we have 53 member states stretching from Turkey and the South Caucasus all the way to the Pacific. And as well as a few other associate members. Our broad mandate is on the promotion of inclusive and sustainable development in our region, and in particular, implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, or the SDGs. I work in Energy Division, and I support our work on energy connectivity. We also support efforts in particular to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 7 on access to modern energy resources, and the implications of energy transition for the extractive industries, which is also under my remit. Let me talk about why we at ASECCC see connectivity as such an important topic, and in particular cross-border power system integration. As the energy transition accelerates, we expect to see an increasing share of renewable energy in the power system and a shift away from traditionally fossil fuel dominated energy systems. So what traditionally had relied on coal, natural gas, or more dispatchable generation will shift to power systems that are much more dependent on weather-dependent energy technologies, in particular solar PV and wind, but also other technologies as well, such as wave and maybe more flexible hydro. This means in particular thinking more carefully about the role of some of the enabling technologies. Traditionally, we think of power systems as basically utilizing grids to bring supply to demand. But in the context of energy transition, we know that we'll have more behind the meter and distributed generation. So the grids will be more bidirectional in nature. We'll need more flexibility throughout the power system, both on the demand side and on the supply side. We'll need more storage, of course, to manage some of that variability. And the role of grids will actually increase in importance. as we still use it to connect supply to demand, but also use it as a tool for managing volatility. And I'll get a bit into more why that is in a second. One thing we also like to highlight, looking across our region, is there are many multilateral connectivity initiatives across our region which take as at least some component of their work energy cooperation across borders. I'm sitting in Bangkok. For those of you who know Southeast Asia, you might be aware of the ASEAN Power Grid. We'll hear in a moment about work on the Greater Mekong subregion, but you can look across our region and find other initiatives that try to encourage or enable more collaboration on energy issues, and in particular, power system connectivity. South Asia has, for example, efforts through the SAARC Energy Center, such as the SAARC Energy Ring. You have also efforts in Central Asia, such as the Central Asia Regional Electricity Market Proposal. We have done work in Northeast Asia. I could go on and on. The point is, multilateral connectivity is not something new, but these initiatives are fragmented and overlapping. And one of the things that we're trying to do at ESCAP is to bring a bit more coherence to them, and certainly to help enable them to be more successful than they have been in the past. And our member states have recognized this, both the importance of connectivity and ESCAP's role. Let me touch a bit on why our member states think connectivity is so important. Maybe some of you will already be aware of these, but there mainly are three opportunities that we think connectivity can help to serve. One is economic. It can provide access to lower cost resources. For countries with significant amounts of domestic resources, it has the potential to export power and therefore earn export revenues. You can also increase the economies of scale for investments, build generation bigger than otherwise because you can serve a larger pool of demand, and that allows you to more efficiently and economically build larger generation, especially for renewables. It actually has security benefits. It lowers the requirement for backup generation by allowing us to share reserves across borders, and of course increases resource diversity. And it has sustainability benefits. You can access regions with higher renewable energy potential, and enables the integration of variable renewables through what we call resource smoothing. We're just taking advantage of the fact that the weather patterns shift from place to place. The wind is always blowing somewhere. The sun is always shining somewhere. So larger grids allow you to take advantage of those natural variations in weather patterns. Our member states, recognizing these benefits, also noted that there are many obstacles to progress, many challenges that need to be overcome, and encouraged ESCAP to work with our member states to leverage solutions to utilize cross-border connectivity more effectively to meet these three goals. I won't go through all of these, but in 2021, our member states endorsed the regional roadmap on power system connectivity, which has 9 strategies for enabling cross-border connectivity aligned with sustainable development. And broadly, those break down into 4 categories. There are strategies around planning, strategies on financing and development of cross-border infrastructure, strategies focusing on operational issues, and some cross-cutting ones, such as the importance of trust and political will, the necessity of building capacity, and ensuring coherence of connectivity with the SDGs, which I put in bold here because I want to come back to that later on. Just to highlight again, that you can find many studies, and again, I think we'll hear more in a moment, but we did some analysis in collaboration with Transition Zero, looking at what a fully integrated ASEAN power grid would bring to Southeast Asia. This is using their modeling tools, which are free and open source. And the short result was that we find that if you had a fully integrated ASEAN power grid that allowed for multilateral, multidirectional power trading across all 10 countries, you would allow countries to achieve their net zero targets faster than they could otherwise by allowing them to more easily integrate and access renewable energy resources. The cost to consumers would be lower by about 8% on average. And just from an infrastructure perspective, just from a system benefits perspective, for every $1 you spend on grid infrastructure, system costs are reduced by $7.4. So in other words, this is essentially a free lunch. If you invest in grids, you will get benefits that far outweigh the costs. Nevertheless, we are seeing significant challenges to integration that prevent these benefits from being fully realized. And you can broadly break them down to 3 categories. I won't go into all of these in depth, but perhaps we can discuss them more later. Some of these are political. I mentioned the importance of political will. That's not just simply saying we think it's a good idea. There's a need for sustained political support. Governments need to be committed to this. It's a long-term project that requires long-term support at the governmental level. And that could be enabled by the development of intergovernmental agreements that set responsibilities, provide guidance, etc. There are, of course, many technical challenges, such as the need to have harmonized or aligned grid codes, You need some kind of a methodology for allowing costs to be shared with countries that might act as a transit country, a wheeling country. You need some kind of procedure for enabling third-party access for external resources. Many utilities and power systems in our region are vertically integrated and don't allow for third-party access. But if you're going to enable it for a cross-border trade, you have to allow a third party, in this case, another country, to have some level of access to your grid. You need data information sharing. And of course, we know we need more infrastructure for transmission in particular, both domestically and cross borders. And you need institutional support as well, with mostly in the form of regional institutions with clear mandates. Maybe you need some kind of a settlement and payment mechanism. Often we're talking about countries with different currencies, a dispute resolution mechanism. Perhaps if it's in the form of power exchange, you have to ask, where is that power exchange going to be hosted? Maybe it can be a national institution, but probably a regional institution could also be a good alternative. How do we accelerate progress on connectivity? This is a little bit of a complicated chart, and I'm noticing that my time is running short, so I won't go into it in too much detail. But broadly speaking, there are two challenges or opportunities that we need to address. One is how you incentivize long-term system needs. This means ensuring that we have the incentives to build out grid infrastructure, but also incentives to build out the appropriate generation infrastructure, especially renewables, which are very capital intensive, both grids and generation. So a lot of upfront investment costs and a lot of consideration for how those costs are recovered over time and shared across borders. We also need to think about the short-term system needs, such as how to ensure sufficient security of supply and enable sufficient flexibility of operations. And underpinning both of these is the importance, of course, as I mentioned, of political will. You need that for both types of market mechanisms or whatever drives investments in and operational needs of generation and grids. But also you have to ensure that power system connectivity is aligned with sustainable development. It's important to emphasize that connectivity is just a tool. It doesn't guarantee that more renewables will come. It simply makes it easier to build more renewables, integrate them into your grid. But that means you need to have policies that bring those two together. So the last point I want to raise on that alignment is something that we have been working on at SCAP, which we call our Green Power Corridor Framework, which is linked to one of the strategies in our roadmap and offers guidance on how to align connectivity initiatives with sustainable development. The framework provides a set of practical and relevant principles structured across 6 building blocks that help to structure and orient connectivity initiatives. And at the moment, we're working on a set of metrics to also enable the measurement of connectivity projects against relevant sustainability criteria, a kind of high-level, light touch approach to give you a sort of first-level assessment as to whether a proposed project can and will improve sustainable development across various SDGs, not only SG7, but many others as well, or if perhaps it actually work in opposition to that. So with all that, let me end my presentation. Very much looking forward to the conversation. And Bonnie, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. So it's great to hear about, some of the findings, some of the sort of analysis about, what's the importance and also some of the challenges faced by, when it comes to, achieving this whole sustainable power system connectivity idea. So I think next up, we'll actually turn to May. She'll be sharing her presentation about the Mekong for the Future project. And this is also one of her main roles at WWF. And so a lot of her work focuses on contributing to initiatives for sustainable renewable energy development and climate change mitigation and adaptation in the region. So I'll pass it over to you, May. Thank you.
And hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is May, and I'm Energy Officer from WWF Greater Mekong. Today, I would like to present about the key findings from our study, which we have recently published in February this year. So the report is about towards a green and inclusive power sector in the Greater Mekong sub-region. First, due to the time limitation, I would like to quickly introduce about the study and then the background. So as you can see that the energy demand in the Greater Mekong sub-region is rapidly evolving. The demand is forecasted to be triple by 2050. Therefore, our study is trying to explore the potential pathways for low cost, low carbon, and low conflict development of the sector. As you can see, it mainly relies on the fossil fuels and hydro. So our study intends to find out the low cost, low carbon, and low conflict development of the sector. What makes our study different from others is our study have input from representative from CSO from the 5 Greater Mekong sub-region countries, that is Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam. And in our study, there are 4 main components. First is electricity market analysis. Second is electricity system modeling based on their electricity markets and data. And then the third is technical, economic, and social analysis. And then the fourth is policy recommendations and strategy based on their finding from their energy modeling. So in our study, there are 4 scenarios considered. First is the base scenario, where it reflects their current power development plans across the region. The second is the grid interconnection expansion scenario, where we consider the interconnection expansions across the 5 countries based on the least cost basis. And the third one is the renewable energy scenario, where a target of 100% renewable energy share in the Greater Mekong sub-region is considered by 2050. And the fourth one is the renewable energy with the grid interconnection expansion scenario, where we consider both the renewable energy target and then the interconnection expansions across the countries. In our study, the Walpen electricity planning model 2 was used as the least cost generation expansion optimization tool. Due to the time limitation, I would like to focus on the renewable energy with the interconnection expansion scenario in their discussions. So first, let's look at their energy generation mix. Here, as you can see, the renewable energy with the interconnection expansion scenario reduces the need for their storage and backup thermal capacity in the system compared to their other scenarios. And when we look at the cost, which is one of the most important factor when we talk about the electricity, so the renewable energy with the interconnection expansion scenario have the lowest levelized cost of electricity at $48.75 per megawatt hour by 2050. It is the green one here. So people might wonder why it can be lower, as their RE seems to be more expensive, but actually it is not. But here you can see that the RE-EXP scenario, which is the renewable energy with the interconnection expansion scenario, has the reduction in the fuel cost. And then because of the interconnection expansion, it also reduced the storage cost for the storage. That's why it has the lowest levelized cost of electricity and reduction in the annual generation costs. So now when we look at another important factor, that is the emissions, we can see that the renewable energy with the interconnection expansion scenario have the reduction of the 470 megatons of emissions, which is in the baseline scenario. So it can reduce around 470 megatons. So it is a very important factor to consider when we talk about the regional grids and when we talk about their REs. So here it's the amount of energy traded. You can see by 2050, compared to their other scenarios, even in 2050, just with the interconnection expansion scenario, and then combining the renewable energy target with the interconnection expansion scenario, the amount of the energy traded is like triple, like more than triple. So we can see the benefits of combining the renewable energy targets and then the interconnection expansion scenario. So the amount of power traded is over 350 terawatt hour by 2050. So these are some of the recommendations from our study, but there are more recommendations and you can find out in our reports. The first one is to develop a complementary regional day-ahead power markets. Like Matthew explained earlier, there are already regional markets in our region, in like the like the one with the Singapore, so that we can develop their complementary regionality hub for our market, which is beneficial for their region. And the second is to redefine the GMS regional grid codes. As they're different in different country, we have different grid codes, and having a regional grid code is really important to have to encourage the development of the regional grid. And the third one is to develop regional energy zones, renewable energy zones, to support the development of transmission infrastructure and renewable power trade, which is quite crucial to reduce the cost of the transmission lines in each country. So it is one of the factors to consider for the countries. The fourth one is to have the regional targets for energy efficiency. In our study, we consider that 30% of their energy demand will be reduced by 2050 because of the energy efficiency. So it is that's why the cost of their renewable energy with the interconnection expansions are lower than others. So it is one of their energy efficiency really plays an important role to bring down their costs. And then the fifth one is to seize their hydropower development on the main stem of their principal and ecologically sensitive rivers. And as we are aware that although hydro is renewable, it also have impact on their society and people, and then also in the biodiversity. So in our study, we try to minimize the role of hydro, and we try to limit the role of the new development of the hydro to 30% in our study. And we try to show it is possible to implement their power development to meet their demand by 2050 by minimizing the role of the hydro and more focusing on the variable renewable energy. And the sixth one is to explore how existing hydropower can facilitate a higher share of variable energy, which is also important. Rather than developing new hydro, then we also need to consider how we can better use of the existing hydropowers. So in conclusion, what I would like to highlight during this session is like expanding cross-product interconnection transfer capacity enables a higher development of renewable energy at the overall system cost. We have seen that it has the least cost, lowest emission, and so that with less impact on their society by reducing their hydropower developments, it will have less impact on the community, so that it can have low conflict. That's why we said low conflict energy. So the renewable energy and the power trade can lead to a inclusive power sector, energy security, and environmental sustainability. Here, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the contribution of the Energy Innovation Network, which is the network of the CSO formed during our study, and from the 5 Greater Mekong sub-region. We have their input, and we consider their input in our study. When we consider the scenario, their inputs are quite important for us. So we're really grateful for their contributions, and also we like to acknowledge the USAID for their support for this study. And here you can get our reports and then the executed summary from this QR code. And thank you so much.
Thank you, May. Thank you very much. So I just wanted to take this opportunity as well to let our audience know, if you have any questions that you want to ask our fellow speakers, feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A box underneath. There's a Q&A option where you can send questions, so keep those coming. Next up, we have our next speaker. Subrajit will be sharing some of his interesting findings. So let me just give him a quick intro about him. So he actually leads the Tetra Tech energy consulting practice for South Asia, and he manages a portfolio of energy sector consulting projects and executes Tetra Tech's Asia Pacific growth strategy. He also has about 18 years of experience working in the sustainable financing field and also on a lot of clean energy related projects. So in this session, he'll be talking about some of the potential of cross-border electricity trade through power exchanges in South Asia. So I'll hand it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bonnie. I'm really happy to be speaking here. And so a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to colleagues. And thanks, Matthew and May, for setting the stage with some of the imperatives that are required for propagating cross-border electricity trade in our region, in the Asian region. So what I wanted to discuss today is how in the South Asian region, cross-border electricity trade is gradually moving from a bilateral mechanism to trading through power exchanges. It has been a recent development over the last 2 years and have been gaining momentum. So before I get onto it, just an introduction. I think Bonnie helped me on that already. So Tetra Tech is a global provider of consulting and engineering services, and we broadly work around water, environment, sustainable infrastructure, renewable energy, and international development areas. I am leading Tetra Tech's energy consulting practice in the South Asian region. And we broadly work around energy market reforms, sustainable clean finance, utility management, energy access, and similar thematic areas. Cross-border power trade and regional cooperation in power sector. We have been working in this area in South Asia and Central Asia, East Europe, where we very recently helped Ukraine getting integrated with the European power market, and of course in Africa as well. So moving ahead, again, a very short presentation, but broadly, I wanted to discuss what is the opportunity for South Asia, the policy and regulatory framework, the power market structure in this region, and some of the recent development in terms of trading through power exchanges. In South Asia, cross-border electricity trade provides a great opportunity to optimize the overall resource mix, because there is a lot of resource complementarity that we see between the individual countries in the region. For example, Bangladesh is dependent on gas and has a resource crunch in terms of fast-tracking renewable energy development. While on the other hand, countries like Bhutan and Nepal are hydro-dominant and are already exporting hydro energy or has a potential to become a net exporter of hydro energy. So as we move from bilateral to trilateral, countries like Bhutan, Nepal can help countries like Bangladesh and even India, which is still a way to go in terms of integrating the renewable energy that it is developing into its grid, in helping with hydropower development. Similarly, Sri Lanka, there is a lot of opportunity, and though it is still not connected with the Bhutan, India, Bangladesh, Nepal power system, there is already discussions going on in terms of developing a subsea interconnector between Sri Lanka and India, which can help in, again, integrating the region more wholesomely. So I don't want to get into the details of the power trade that is already happening on a bilateral basis in this region, but around 4,000 megawatt of trading is happening between India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and India, Nepal, mainly through long-term power purchase agreements. And as I mentioned, gradually we are seeing that there are discussions and solid actions being taken to move from a bilateral to a trilateral arrangement. So Bangladesh buying power from Bhutan, transiting through India, or from Nepal transiting to India, and so on and so forth. So India, of course, geographically lies in a central position to facilitate power trade in the region. And even in terms of the power market framework, some of which Matthew talked about, for example, open access, it is in a more advanced stage in the regulatory journey. So it has a role to play in facilitating power trade in the region. So back in 2018, the Indian government came up with a guideline for import-export of cross-border electricity trade in the region. This aimed to facilitate trade between India and the neighboring countries through robust infrastructure development and by promoting transparent and regulatory predictable mechanisms. However, it was silent about the trilateral arrangements which gradually evolved. So in 2019, the CERC came up with the regulations for facilitating cross-border power trade on how the participating entities in India and neighboring entities can actually get into power trading. And in 2021, the Regulatory Commission, the central regulator in India, CERC, came up with a power market regulations, which defined what would be the price discovery mechanisms, the scheduling delivery mechanisms, and how the foreign entities can also participate in Indian power exchanges. But probably the most important or the most grassroots level procedure that came up was in 2021, which enabled the process of approval and laid down the procedure for import and export of electricity between India and its neighbors. So this was a procedure for approval for facilitating import-export of electricity by designated authority. The designated authority is an institutional arrangement that has been nominated by the regulator, who will look after the entire process. So the framework has enabled electricity trading licenses in India to licensees in India to trade in the Indian Power Exchange on behalf of entities from neighboring countries. For example, the Bhutan Power Corporation, or the Bhutan or the Bangladesh Power Development Board, or the Nepal Electricity Authority. Again, very quickly, the power market structure in India, which is important to understand what exactly is happening. So the long-term power market is, of course, there. Until now, the power trade was happening more on a long-term to a medium-term basis, so through bilateral arrangements. But right now, what we're seeing is more active participation in the short-term market, particularly in the power exchanges. So, of course, the ancillary markets, the balancing markets are there, but now we are seeing participation in the power exchanges. The power exchanges, again, have various instruments. So the day-ahead market, the term-ahead market, and the real-time market. Of course, there are the renewable energy corollaries to this market segment. So the green day-ahead market, the green term-ahead market. So initially, we were seeing participation of the foreign entities of Bhutan and Nepal mostly into the day-ahead market. But right now, we are also seeing this since last year in the real-time market. As I mentioned, the participation and transaction of the power on energy exchange for any of the South Asian nation is governed by the procedure for approval and facilitating of import-export of electricity, which was issued by the Central Electricity Authority of India in 2021. So what's the process? So first, a foreign entity, a South Asian entity, non-Indian South Asian entity will need to sign a power trade agreement with an Indian trader. So an Indian entity which has been licensed by the Indian Regulatory Commission to be a trader in the Indian Power Exchange. Once that is done, then all import of and export of electricity shall take place only after approval of the designated authority, which will advise the entities and the system operator, which is NLDC, the National Load Dispatch Center, to facilitate scheduling of such cross-border transaction. Then the applications will need to be submitted with all details of export of power in case of a generator, or import of power in case it is a distribution company or a consumer. So the applicants will also clearly need to mention the maximum quantity of electricity and other such details. The grant of approval will subsequently be provided. And one important consideration that the Indian government or the Indian entity is asking is about the ownership pattern of the projects, especially in case of importing projects. And then again, I mean, Matthew mentioned very rightly about the importance of open access in facilitating cross-border power trade. So the final step is the entities applying with the central transmission utility in India for a grant of non-discriminatory open access to start on the trading in power exchanges. So recent developments. So once the policy and regulatory framework was let down, in the Indian Energy Exchange launched CBET on its platform. And since then, Nepal and Bhutan have been trading on day-ahead market and very recently on the real-time market. This started on April 2021 when Nepal became the first country to participate. So far, Nepal has purchased around 2,800 million units and sold around 3,000 million units. So it is taking advantage of its dry and wet hydropower seasonality. It is selling a surplus electricity during the monsoon season, the rainy season, and buying in the dry season. So this trade has increased by 14% if we see in the last year compared to the previous year, and it is gradually increasing every year. Bhutan has also commenced trading on the day-ahead market from January 2022 and bought around 1,700 million units. So similar complementarity is being leveraged. The wet season surplus is being already sold. There are already bilateral arrangements for that, but Bhutan currently is facing a dry season deficit, which is meeting from the Indian power system. The real-time market segment trading has also started since August 2023. And now the Indian Energy Exchange is actually closely working with stakeholders in Bangladesh, where actually Tetra Tech is also supporting some of the Bangladesh government entities to facilitate its participation in the Indian power exchanges. So that's all broadly. I mean, power trading in this region in South Asia is moving towards a more trilateral arrangement and a system-to-system power transfer. And some of the upcoming developments we are looking forward to is, of course, the India-Sri Lanka interconnector and Bangladesh buying directly from projects in Bhutan and Nepal. I think I'll hand it over, Bonnie, to you to take this forward.
Okay, thank you very much. So again, if you have any questions for Subrajit and also from other speakers, feel free to, again, leave your questions in the Q&A section. We'll address those at the very end. So last but not least, let's get to Dr. Chang Liu. He's the co-chair and secretary general of the Global Forum on Energy Security, and he's based in Beijing. He's been in this role since 2012. He's also a consulting expert on energy and the Belt and Road Initiative for the United Nations ASECCC group. So let me pass it on now to Dr. Chang. So if you can unmute yourself, and if you have any slides to share, feel free to also put those up. And make sure you unmute yourself if you speaking there. Is Dr. Liu here? Looks like you're still
yes,
muted.
I'm here.
Yes. Yeah. Okay,
okay.
now we can hear you. So if you have any slides, feel free to share. Otherwise, we can go ahead.
Yes, no problem. So it's my turn.
Yeah, see if you can share screen. We're not seeing the slides yet.
Yeah, let me share my screen.
Sure.
So can you see the slides?
Yes, we can see it now. So if you can put it on full screen, that would be great.
Okay, I will. So
yes,
good
that's
afternoon,
perfect.
everybody. Yeah, I'm sorry for the trouble of my computer, but still we can work. So let me share some views from me and from China. Since 2015, the International Energy Charter have some ideas about the Super Asia grid, focusing on China and Mongolia and Eastern Russia. So I expanded the idea to a few East Asia. China has established a very very huge installed capacity of power generation. We have the largest coal-fired power generation, and everything in power generation is the largest in China. So based on this huge installed capacity, I think, and we still think China can have better interconnections with our neighbor countries. But nowadays, you know, the war in Europe has affected the economy of Russia and also in North Korea. So the super grid from northeast China to Russia and North Korea is not possible right now. But I think if in future, if we have a better political situation, we can still restart this idea. But in some provinces, coastal provinces like Shandong provinces and Hebei province is very close to South Korea, and South Korea, maybe some like Japan, they don't have fossil fuels. They don't have coal, don't have LNG, the natural gas. So if China can export some share of wind power and solar power, is I think is win-win cooperation between China and South Korea and even Japan. Now, from Shandong province, the peninsula at this place is very close to South Korea. That's about 200 kilometers if we use the sea cable. The cable under the sea is very easily to connect the Shandong province and South Korea. And along the coastal provinces like Shandong and even Jiangsu, they have a big capacity, including wind power and even nuclear, and also the coal-fired power. So in some seasons like spring or autumn, not high demand months in China, these areas can export the electric power to South Korea. This is an idea about the northeast China to our neighbors, and also in Inner Mongolia. If you are familiar with the China's geography, is Gobi Desert, and Inner Mongolia is close to the Republic of Mongolia. Nowadays, we are exporting some power to some towns in Mongolia. In their language, it is called the sumu. We are exporting some electricity to Mongolia, and in future, if Mongolia, the Republic of Mongolia, can have a good development of wind power, you know, they have good resources of wind power and even solar power in the summer days. So if they have a good development in solar and wind power, they can export the power to China also. In the perspective of BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, Chinese supposed to have good connections with Mongolia and Russia, and also include the cooperation of energy between the countries. If China have good development in economy and also the transmission lines, the cooperation between Mongolia and Russia, Far Eastern Russia can have a good perspectives. You know, in Russia, Far Eastern Russia, they have good resources of hydropower, and even they have many coal and natural gas resources. They hope to export to China also. In this direction, the southwest China and the neighbor countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, Burma, and Thailand, we can have better connections, interconnections in grid. In this direction, we from China's side is the south grid. We call it Nanfangdiaba, the South China grid. They have a less demand of electricity. You know, these areas include Guangdong province, Guangxi, Yunnan, and Guizhou provinces. Nowadays, they are reliable to produce more electricity. From in these areas, I think it's better for both sides to export or import generation, the power. You know, if Chinese economy recover very quickly, we will need more power generations. Maybe it can be imported from North Vietnam and Laos and Burma. But if in other directions, if these countries, especially in Vietnam, they have a better economic growth recent years, so they need more powers. And from Guangxi province and Yunnan province, they can also export electricity to Vietnam. And in other countries, especially in the northern part of these areas, there is a very good hydro resources. And in the past, China tried to establish some hydropower projects in these areas, especially in Burma. But later, we have some problems, political problems in these countries. But I still believe in the future, if the situation become better, the energy cooperations between China and these countries can have a good future. And nowadays, Singapore, Malaysia, they have some initiatives to import the electricity from Laos and northern Thailand and even Vietnam to Singapore and Malaysia. In these two countries, they have a larger demand of the electricity. So in the consideration of energy security and carbon neutrality, they hope to import the electricity from northern peninsula of these countries. So, you know, in the coastal provinces of Vietnam, they can have a good future and a big plan of maritime, the offshore wind power plants. And also they can have a good solar power resources. So if the plan of electricity in Vietnam can be realized, they can export more electricity to southern countries like Malaysia and Singapore. From the left pictures are in this slide, it is the plan of electricity in Vietnam. You can see they have a very big plan of renewables. So I believe in the future, these areas can have better interconnections of transmission line and its grid interconnection. So the cost of the wind power and solar power in Vietnam is very economic now. The cost of the ground solar plants is like about 0.5 US dollar per kilowatts per kWh, and for the wind power plants is also like the 0.6 US dollar. So it will be more and more economic advantages in renewables, contrasted to the coal-fired. In the third direction is the Central Asia and the Xinjiang province of China. So nowadays, these two areas, even they are very close, but it is separated, maybe from historical views. Before now, the Central Asia is more like former Soviet Union. The electric grid is connected in its areas in these 5 stands, like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. They are very connected, although they are in desert and maybe very huge areas, but the grid is connected. But from the green development view, their power plants are most coal-fired. So for more greener, future, they need maybe more renewables, like more wind power, solar power. They have good resources of this, and China is helping them to establish more and more renewable plants. And in Xinjiang, although Xinjiang has many coal and natural gas resources, China is still building more and more wind power and solar power plants there. Since last year, China and these Central Asia countries have built more and more connections, like a railway project connecting Xinjiang and Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. Is a project detained by Russia before, but now this, the situation in Ukraine, Russia has not so strong power to stop this project. So this project is started last year, and along with this railway project, more and more transmission line will be established in China and between Xinjiang and the Central Asia countries. In Xinjiang, although they have very good natural gas and coal resources and wind and solar resources, the transmission distance is very big from Xinjiang to inner China. So it will be easier to connect Xinjiang with Central Asia countries. Another side is the Pakistan. And although there is a SEPA project to connect Xinjiang and Pakistan, but in the view of geography, it's too difficult to connect the grid. It's a high plateau, the Pamir plateau is an obstacle to separate Xinjiang and Pakistan. So maybe it will be better to connect the Xinjiang with Central Asia and through Central Asia to be connected with Iran and Afghanistan and Pakistan. So this is my view of China's interconnection with our neighboring countries. I believe in future, if Chinese economy has a good, a better connection with our neighbors, we will have more interconnection programs with these countries. This is my view of the cooperation of the great connection. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Liu. So given the time, we'll just jump right straight into the Q&A session. So here's the first question. How can the development of renewable energy zones support the deployment of transmission infrastructure and facilitate variable renewable energy trade in the region? And then the second part of the question asks, what are some of the practical considerations in implementing this recommendation? So does anyone want to give a first try? Yes, May.
Yes, I would like to answer that. I think it relates to my presentation. So having the renewable energy zones make use of their shared network infrastructure, which is one of their main factor to consider for their project developers and then the planners. So who are gonna pay for the cost? Some of the developer, they share the cost, and some in some like projects or in some country, their planners get their pay for the cost, and then they get their cost cover from their users. So that's the way. So having their renewable energy zones can make use of their high potential renewable energy sites areas, and then make use of their shared network infrastructure, which can encourage their deployment of their renewable energies and also their implementation of the plans, and also it reduces the time needed for their developing their renewable energy projects and then trying to develop their HV high voltage transmission lines. So these are their developments, these are their benefits of their having their renewable energy zones. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, May. Okay, so the next question looks at what are some of the types of regional targets for energy efficiency would be most effective in driving improvements across participating countries, and also how can these targets be designed to account for the varying circumstances and baselines of different nations?
Yes, let me also.
Yeah, seems like it's also for you.
Yes. Yeah, sorry for taking the floor. So these are for first, like having a minimum energy performance standards, which is also very crucial for their energy efficiency targets and measure. So, and also their building codes, as the countries are in the tropical area where the majority of the energy consumption is from their cooling, and so having their building code is quite important for the energy efficiency targets also. So, so these are the first few recommendations. There are also multiple sectors and like urban planning, etc. In addition to the minimum energy performance standards, and the most crucial thing is the proactive and policy of the countries for these energy efficiency measures and the plans to come. So these are some of the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. So here's another question. I think maybe we can get Matthew to try and answer this one. So the current ASEAN power grid plans are largely based on cross-border trade between Thailand, Laos, and Malaysia, and rely heavily on controversial hydropower and fossil fuels rather than renewable resources like wind and solar power. So what steps can the key stakeholders like ASEAN governments, ADB, and donor countries what can they take to ensure a just energy transition towards a more sustainable power source in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, it's an important question. One thing I would say is if you look historically at how these projects have been developed, the primary concerns of the countries doing the cross-border projects has been a combination of affordability and security, right? They want to make sure they can keep costs low to consumers while also ensuring that the power is as reliable and available as possible, which has driven investment in some of these hydro projects or focus on thermal cross-border generation. But we've seen a real shift in mindset. You can look at the Singapore experience, for example, where they started with a small trade with Laos, 100 megawatts of hydropower, now expanded to 300 megawatts, transferred through Thailand and Malaysia. But now they're procuring up to 4 gigawatts of renewable energy cross-border because, of course, they can't develop all that domestically. They don't have the physical land or space for it. But they have a very strict requirement in terms of emissions that would not allow a coal or natural gas plant that's unabated to qualify. It doesn't mean that it's only going to be renewables. It's not a zero carbon target, but it absolutely means renewables or some kind of a carbon abatement has to be part of the mix. And that's because not only Singapore, but countries in our region as a whole are increasingly committing to net zero targets and need some way of achieving those targets in a way that's still affordable and still reliable. And of course, just in general, there's a recognition the economics have shifted. Renewables are cheap, they're really affordable. And the economic driver for renewable energy investments is a not inconsiderable one. It's driving a lot of projects across our region, but that raises additional questions about how you integrate these projects. What are the balancing resources? How do you ensure that if you're developing solar rapidly, that you can actually utilize it all efficiently and securely? So this is, I think, ultimately why we have our Green Power Corridor framework. As I said, it's not about sort of seeing connectivity as a driver of sustainable development. It's not, it's a tool, but it's a tool in the toolbox that countries can and should leverage to help meet their goals, to better and more effectively integrate renewables at higher shares and at lower costs while maintaining high levels of reliability. So I think what we're seeing is a shift that will lead to real acceleration, not only of renewable energy deployment, but of the utilization of cross-border trade as an enabler of the integration of renewable energy resources in particular.
Is there something, I don't know, so thanks, Matthew. So you talked mostly about, in terms of ASEAN countries and the collaboration between there. So just wondering from maybe for Subrajit as well, is there anything you want to add in terms of, focusing on more on South Asia's side in terms of, like India and some other neighboring countries?
Yeah, no, of course. So we are seeing a lot of renewable energy development in South Asia as well. And with renewable energy development, the other imperative that comes into focus is integrating that into the grid. Because, it's, as somebody mentioned, it's weather dependent, it's intermittent. So that's why a lot of storage is also coming into the system. Hydropower is getting integrated. And countries which really do not have hydropower resources or storage resources, cheap storage resources yet, are looking towards more integrated grid to bring into those balancing and the ancillary services aspects into this regional power market.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we have one last question here. I think it's quite an interesting one for Dr. Liu. So this question asks, given the wide cultural differences in Northeast Asia, are there challenges that may be encountered in the implementation of a Northeast Asian supergrid for large-scale integration of renewable energy? So Dr. Liu, would you be able to give some insights on that? You may have to unmute yourself again.
While we wait for Dr. Liu.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dr. Liu. Then I might add one thing.
Thank you for your question. It's very interesting and very important. China. We are developing renewable projects very quickly. In the past years, the coal-fired power generation occupied more than 50% in China, the mix. But now this is the first time to close to the 50%. If we have a lower share of the coal-fired and a higher share of the renewables, the carbon emission from China will be reduced step by step. And We have a very strong grid. This grid accustomed with the coal-fired. They used this structure because it is the first. The priority is the security in before, and later is still the priority. But if we need to transmit from this style, coal-fired style, to a new style, like more renewable style. So we need more and more revolution of this, especially the technological, the methodology, and more capability. Capability building. So in the Northeast Asia, the renewables exports from China can be good news to South Korea and Japan, because they are more dependent on natural gas. Natural gas still fossil fuels, but in China we can have a good resource of wind power and solar power, and especially the offshore power. If the cost of offshore power be reduced in future, the total structure in Northeast Asia can be improved from the export of renewables from China.
Okay, thank you very much. So I guess
if I could just add one
quick
thing,
yes.
sorry, because I just wanted to
Yes.
mention that ASECCC, we did a report last year looking at this topic. It's Green Power Corridor Roadmap for Northeast Asia, looking specifically at how to enable more cross-border connectivity among the 6 countries in Northeast Asia. Just to say to the question, I don't think the obstacles are cultural. There's already a lot of economic integration in Northeast Asia. I think they're basically political and to some extent technical. We could dig into it more, but there's also a need for more institutional collaboration. And on a very sensitive topic, electricity is a concern for many countries about maintaining higher levels of reliability. But there's still opportunities for integration and collaboration, I think, in that region. I'd highly recommend looking at our report on that topic. Thanks.
Thanks, Matthew. So I guess we'll have to end the session here, given the time. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to all our speakers for taking the time to share, all these very insightful information, and also audience for, taking the time also to be part of this meaningful panel discussion. We do have more sessions coming up in this afternoon. So especially for those who are taking part in the session later on the SDG 7 on strategies to address the energy crisis and achieve energy security for all. I'll also be there. So hopefully I'll see you guys there as well. So thank you very much, and hope you guys have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.